Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Healing and Dealing podcast. Today, I'm so honored and excited to introduce Kady Romagnuolo. She is a spiritual business coach who helps heart led entrepreneurs overcome fear, break the cycle of self sabotage, and release past traumas so they can build a business that they love and find fulfillment in their life and work. She is a certified NLP master practitioner, multiple best selling and award winning author, international speaker on the world tour for Think and Grow Rich, podcast host, and was recently featured on the hit TV show Dragon's Den. Wow. Founder of Moon Logic, Kady's unique system teaches how to work with the moon phases to navigate life and business. She helps transform passion projects into 6 or even 7-figure empires. She blends her expertise in business and passion for helping others as the founder and broker of record at Blue Moon Realty and boutique real estate broker, helping home buyers and sellers make the move they never thought was possible. As an advocate for mental health support for real estate professionals, she trains agents across North America. Wow, is there anything you don't do? I'm just wondering. You are,
Thank you so much.
wow, you're amazing. Like just going through your bio, I was like, oh my gosh, she does it all.
Yeah, well, I definitely wasn't someone who was doing it all before, and it's really just been passion pieces of things I've really wanted to do over the years.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's so cool. Yeah, you're very inspiring, especially for someone like me who's just starting out and would love to have that bio someday. So I love that I get the chance to talk with you and learn about you, and my listeners can learn about you and really dive into your life and what led you here to building this beautiful empire for yourself and for all of the people surrounding you. So
Uh,
we will dive in, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. You've got such a beautiful space, and I love the conversations you're having.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been really fun so far and really healing for myself and of course for, some of the guests that have come on and the listeners and just all the feedback I've been hearing. It's really been awesome. It's like definitely a passion project that I would love to turn into something bigger, which I know if I just keep grinding and keep being consistent, it will, especially with, my certification that I just got and practicing NLP and everything, that you do as well, Reiki practitioner. So it's all just like in the works and just building up that confidence, and really stepping into this new version of Charlotte that I've always knew was in there. It's just like coming out now?
Yeah. I love that so much. I relate to that so much. The new version that has to emerge, right?
Yes, yes, exactly. So I'd love for everyone to learn about you and your background. I know that you've suffered from some childhood trauma as well. I know you've battled depression and social anxiety, and here you are in front of me and with this, empire that you've built. So how does one get to where you're at? Like what kind of things did you go through as a child, and what have you had to work through as you've been developing into a woman?
It's such an interesting journey that is really unique to every single person that, ever comes over any childhood adversities or things like that. And for me, I never expected to be here. If you would have asked me 5 years ago, I didn't have a plan to build what I've built today. And it's
Yeah.
just been following that passion piece, one breadcrumb at a time. And in
Wow.
2017, I was sitting in a conference and I was really good at getting out of things like that for a long time because I really struggled with social anxiety and I found it hard to even just sit in the room with other professionals. My hands
Mm,
were sweaty. I didn't know how to network. I was feeling like my heart was racing. I was going to have a panic attack. And in that moment, I actually had some divine intervention that happened for my life and my healing. And in feeling so incredibly uncomfortable in my own skin, I actually
mhm.
beelined it out of the room with the all the big people and the hundreds of people there to a small breakout session. And in that session was where I thought I could just hide and just, be in the back of the room of something smaller. But it turns out that the doorway that I chose that day would actually open up to everything that I'm doing today because
Wow.
there was a set of trainers in there that were talking about NLP. And that's neurolinguistic programming and how the subconscious mind is really responsible for how we show up.
Mhm.
And it holds on to every thought, every experience, and every feeling about every experience we've ever had. And it
Right.
was in some of the moments there, just sitting listening, that I realized I really needed to tell somebody for the very first time that I was struggling with anxiety, that I
Mhm.
didn't know how to talk to people, that I was pretending to be confident. And it was really affecting my work at the time as a real estate agent. And I was crying in my car all the way home, just struggling to exist at that particular time. It
Mhm.
was one of the lowest moments and times in my life. And saying it out loud to a stranger actually caused a huge amount of shame and
Hmm.
just overwhelming feelings of embarrassment. At the time, I actually cried and had
Wow.
tears, and it was this emotional release that I felt really silly about. But of
Yeah.
course, I had accidentally, quotation marks, chosen the perfect person to say it to, because it would start my journey
Yeah.
of healing all of the pieces that were holding me back, that were causing the anxiety and making those connections on really deep levels.
Yeah, that divine intervention, right? It's like these people are placed in our lives at the perfect moment to just crack us open if needed. I love
Yeah,
that. S
absolutely.
so I'm curious, like, normally I would hear people say, saying it out loud felt good, like a relief, but you're saying it was the opposite. So I'm
Yeah, it's a really important distinguishing factor. And that's why I say everybody's journey is so unique. How someone
Mhm.
else expresses and feels that they've progressed may be very different to yourself.
Right.
And one of the big reasons I really had to uncover as to why I felt so much shame really on my voice itself and speaking up for myself was because I grew up in a household where it was not okay to speak up, that it was actually very dangerous at times
Mm,
to say what you were thinking or to go against what you were told, and you were essentially not allowed to have an opinion.
right.
So I grew up in a household that was very controlling, and it was fear that was used in order
Mm,
to keep us in line. So then also going to a really dangerous high school that was rated one of the worst high schools in the entire city.
oh
And
my
there was a lot of
gosh.
gang activity and drug activity. And it was just this whole growing up container, this center of being in fear and trying to survive and learning how to hide essentially. And you don't want to stand out in
Mm,
a scenario like that. So being someone who now is in the spotlight quite often, I've had to overcome a lot of those feelings of, do I feel safe to
yeah.
speak and be seen?
Right. You've been so used to just staying small so no one would notice you. And that's probably why when you came out and said like I have anxiety that you felt like total shame and overwhelm because normally you would never do that.
Yeah.
How were you received when you revealed that to them?
It was the most beautiful moment of my life because it wasn't about words. I couldn't even tell you what the response was to this day because I was so much in my own head thinking, oh my goodness, what are they thinking of me? I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I did that. What am I doing? And the chatter was going on,
Mhm.
that all I remember was the feeling of just being there with one person, even though there was hundreds of people around us,
Yeah.
and realizing that there was a safe energy about that particular person. And
Mhm.
I started to get really intrigued with the energy in the room at that time and how it wasn't just about my learned abilities to communicate or be a salesperson or do the
Mhm.
logical things, but I needed to understand how energy is really transferred to each and every one of us in those connecting moments where someone is
Yes.
truly authentic.
Yeah, and really, like, being aware of how do I feel right now with this person? Yeah, so huge,
Yeah.
definitely. And it's funny because before you're aware of that, you're around people and, like, you can sometimes you get that, like, vibe, that negative energy, and you're like, "What is that?" And you're like, "Something about them I don't vibe with or click with." And then there's those people that are just, like, warm and welcoming, and you just you love being in their presence, so yeah,
Yeah.
becoming aware of that is, it's something I feel like that we learn and we kind of grow, as we get older. Or some people, might not ever learn it. I don't know. They just think it's a feeling. Well,
Yeah.
wow, I'm so glad you met that person. I can relate so much because I I was very similar, like very nervous in social situations. I still am practicing and really working that muscle and being able to network because I'm just not a small talk type person. I would much rather have these deep, meaningful conversations than have to like pitch myself 20 times, like no, that's so
Right.
not me.
I
But
definitely agree.
are you saying that that's, like, something I can learn and get better at? And even though I'm more of an introvert and would like this just, one-on-one type stuff, how has that looked for you?
Oh, yes. So this is something that really excites me for others because I too am very much so an introvert. I could literally go like days and weeks and years without actually seeing another human being and be like, "Oh, I'm cool. Like I should probably get outside." And
Yeah,
it's just I like my personal energy, my safe space. And I think that's also a learned trauma response to some degree for myself personally.
totally.
And getting out of that comfort zone, what I first learned that really, really helped me to get comfortable in my own skin is that I would start to do the opposite of everything that I had done that was
Mm,
causing me to be a recluse.
I like
And
that.
so it started with these little mini action steps of somebody maybe asking to go for lunch or coffee or, networking event or go to a Zoom meeting, things like that. And normally I would have a really good reason as to why I couldn't. I was too busy, it wasn't the right timing or whatever. And instead I would catch myself in the moment and just say, yes, okay. And then have the goodness, feelings of the
Yeah.
nervousness and the panickingness. And then when I would get there, there's two things I would do. I would, even if it was just on screen, really change my state. So shoulders back, because normally I was really good at being sort of contracted in my
Mhm.
shoulders, head down, not looking at anyone, right? And just sort of sitting straight up and having that eye contact. And I would practice this in the grocery store first, where
Love it.
I would walk around, make eye contact with people, like a little bit of a smile, just have a warm demeanor, not talking to people, but in my head, I would actually say, and I would kind of make myself laugh because I felt like such an idiot doing it, but I would say, "Kady, you are so confident. Thanks, Kady.
Mm.
How did you get so confident?" And I'd make it sort of funny and ridiculous in my head
Yeah.
that I would start overriding those feelings of, "You don't know what you're gonna say. You're too shy. I'm too nervous to talk to people," was my old rhetoric that
Mhm.
was going on in my head. So I really practiced that ahead of time and then just learned how to ask questions. That's the skill
Yeah.
set, I think. People really wanna talk about themselves. So,
Mhm.
what are a couple of key questions you can ask that just get other people talking? And
It's
it's
so
really great
true.
icebreaker.
Yeah, I was just listening to a podcast on Mel Robbins, and it was talking about like making friends, and like how difficult that can be if you are an introvert. And
Yeah.
one of the things she said was like in the coffee line when you're in Starbucks or whatever your favorite coffee shop is, don't pull your phone out, stand in the line, feel those uncomfortable feelings of like, okay, like, what do I say? And that's something that I've actually practiced where I'm like, oh, your shirt's really cute, or I'll give a compliment, or just like try to relate in some way, and it really builds conversation. So
Love
yeah,
that.
yeah, it is. I feel like we avoid being uncomfortable so often, and our phone is like a perfect gateway to not
Yeah.
have to cope in those moments.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this little motto that I do now that it's do the thing that scares you most.
Oh, I love
And
that.
yeah, and it keeps evolving. So right now, the thing that scares me most is doing group classes at like a fitness center.
Oh,
And
okay.
right? So it's caused me a lot of anxiety to think about, oh, doing these high intensity classes with others in a group. And but
Mhm.
every time I notice, oh, you're shrinking in your personality and it's feeling a little restrictive. I can't do that. My goodness, I need to do that. So
Oh
do
my
the thing that
gosh.
scares you most.
That, like, totally sends me on a side note because I just signed up for group Pilates classes, and I always try to go to, like, the farthest one, you know? And there's one, it has a machine. It's one of those, carousel Pilates machines, and there's one right in the middle of the room. So one person always has to be in the middle, so that's the scariest for me. I'm gonna do that next time I go.
Love it. Yes. Oh, I love it so much. See, something always comes to mind when I say that. Do the thing that scares you most. It doesn't mean you're jumping off the roof of the Empire State Building or
Right.
something. It's usually a doable action
Yeah.
that has been avoided in the everyday.
Yeah, exactly, and I feel like that's when the magic happens, when you step out of that comfort zone, do something that scares you. I mean, just this podcast alone was like I had major imposter syndrome. I had all that rhetoric that you were talking about, like, no one's gonna listen to me. I can't do this. Like, what do I have to say, you know? And then once I started coming back at that with, I have so much to say. I'm amazing. I've overcame so much, and people do want to hear other people's stories. That's the beauty of life is storytelling, I think. So, yeah, it's just like you're battling yourself all the time.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely.
Yeah, and it's like a muscle you have to build with so many different things. Can you relate to imposter syndrome at all? And going from being this person who stayed so small and now you're a professional speaker, you're an author, like you definitely have had to face that if so.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that. And I think one of the biggest myths about somebody that we think has done something or is successful is that they don't have those feelings. They're never
Mm,
nervous. And I used to think this all the time. The people I would look up to and say, I wish one day I could do these things, but I
yeah.
can't because I get too nervous or I have these thoughts about myself. When
Mhm.
really, the only difference between anyone who's done something you want to do and you is that they just have gotten good at keeping going, even though
Yeah.
they're having those thoughts.
Yeah.
And it's nervousness is still, it's something I think is in my body. It sort of lives in me because of the state I grew up in for so many
Mhm.
years. And I've learned to sort of adjust the perception on what that feeling might be in my body to instead of it manifesting as a panic attack and
Mhm.
being anxiety in my heart space, now I tell myself, well, my goodness, if I'm having a little bit of that feeling all of a sudden, this must be important to me. There's something
Mhm.
I want to do well in what it is that I'm about to step into. And maybe I'm just excited. Like maybe I'm going to do a really great job and I'm just super excited
Mhm.
and noticing and just catching those thoughts, but just doing it anyways. I mean, it still comes up for me even to
Yeah.
this day. I think every time you continue to grow and expand and do something even bigger
Mhm.
and more, it's gonna be there at that threshold of saying yes to those unknown things.
Yeah, totally. That's been huge for me is really recognizing it in my body when I
Mhm.
am having those nervous feelings and really trying to figure out is that nervousness or is that excitement? Is that, you know, um, just looking to like new things and learning and now I'm much better at facing those things. And it's like, okay, I'm nervous, but this is gonna be really fun. And I'm nervous because, like you said, like it's important to me and it's something I want to do well at. So it's gonna be fine. And like all through college, I made myself go first on
Mm,
like I was a communication major. So anytime we had to do a speech, anytime we had to work with a partner and get in front of the class, I would always go first so I didn't have to sit there with those feelings, you know?
yeah.
I would just like get it done and get out and that really has helped me overcome that. Like you said, like doing it over and over again. So yeah, I think really just putting yourself out there and facing it is the best way to overcome it for sure.
Yeah, such a great tip to do it first. Don't stew in all those feelings for all that time and because then you're not even focused in the present of what everybody
Yeah.
else is doing either.
Exactly, you're totally lost in like, "Oh my gosh, I'm sweating, my stomach hurts, my heart's racing," like, I remember my heart just pounding out of my chest, and finally, I put 2 and 2 together, I'm like, "Okay, if in order for me to get through this faster, I just need to get it over with."
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't be as nervous because those feelings hadn't, festered and spiraled into something even worse, so and I would
Yeah.
always do a great job, and I was always super proud of myself after, it's like all inside my brain of you just have to, like, trick yourself all the time, it
Yeah.
feels like.
Oh, it's so true. The very first time on stage, I legit thought I was going to pee my pants. Like, my body was telling me, "You're gonna pee your pants when you walk up there," and I was,
Oh
like,
my
telling my mind,
gosh.
"This can't happen," and right as they're announcing me and I'm about to walk up the steps, I'm literally thinking to myself, this may be happening." Like, I just it was the craziest thing, and
Oh
of
my
course, I didn't
gosh.
pee my pants, but I
Yeah.
feel like I could have convinced myself that I was going to, but I let myself keep thinking those thoughts.
I'm curious, what was your first talk on stage? Like, what was it about?
This was such an incredible full circle moment for me because remember that 2017 conference that I was
Mhm.
sitting in, and it was extraordinarily hard just to be in the audience. Well, that same conference in 2019, I actually was a speaker on stage there
Wow.
talking about the journey of anxiety and conquering fear in your career. And it was a huge real estate conference for top producers. And it was the first time I was able to be around my peers and
Mhm.
feel like I had worth and feel
Yeah.
like I had confidence and the ability to be there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love that. Do you find that it's harder to or that did you sometimes I think doing that type of thing in front of your peers is harder than doing it in front of strangers.
Yeah. Oh, most definitely. Because I feel like you can be whoever you want to be in front of a stranger. Even though that might sound a bit strange, it's like I get to try on this part of my personality that I haven't
Mhm.
shown to other people before. And it's really that allowing yourself to be reinvented. And it's one of the reasons I love moon phases because during the new moon phase is when I teach how to step into almost like an alternate personality or an
Mm.
alter ego and trying on that identity. Because if it's a piece of you that you'd like to show to others or embody, then it is actually in you.
Yeah.
And it's just waiting for permission to actually be expressed.
You have to talk more about that. That is I was gonna ask you about the moon phases and how you navigate that with people. So this is something that you offer as a coach, right?
Yeah, so I'm all about the moon phases. And as a spiritual business coach, I teach energetics in business. And we dive a bit into the logical business practices and planning and all of that good stuff. But
Mhm.
really, it's more about when you're showing up in a certain way, there's actually some energetic components collectively to how the world runs and where our
Yeah.
natural cycles are that actually either support, say, moving forward, taking action, moving out of your comfort zone and building momentum, or
Mhm.
there's other phases that are more conducive to rest and rejuvenating and getting feedback and making adjustments in your life and business. So, if you kind of picture the salmon, how it swims upstream to get to its destination, and a lot of them don't make it to where they need to migrate.
Mhm.
That's what most people are doing in life is we are
Mm.
going against the grain of our natural flow. And we do this because it is preached and it has been the way of the world through structures and systems that you hustle and you grind and you burn yourself out and then we celebrate you because you're so busy that you don't have time to do anything else. And
So true.
like I died in that life and I'm so sick and tired of the mentality that that's how you be successful.
Yeah.
So looking at moon phases, the reason I really got into this was after I did all my logical trainings, I got communication skills and all that good stuff. I
Mhm.
still had a big piece of me that just felt uncomfortable in certain scenarios and I couldn't really understand it. And there was one night when I was standing out on the shoreline of my property that I had this waterfront home that I was having a lot of trouble selling. And I didn't understand why, because it was so beautiful.
Mhm.
But my own energy was influencing the sale. I was just like really funky in my space at the time. I didn't get where I was supposed to go in life. I was out of alignment.
Right.
And I would go out in the middle of the night and stare up at the sky, and it was this big, beautiful full moon that, we tend to be obsessed with. We love full moons as humans.
Mhm.
And I would pour my heart out. I would cry. I would ask, why is my life so hard? What am I doing wrong? Why am I struggling? Where's with
Yeah.
this anxiety coming from? And I didn't realize the power of what energy I was actually sitting in at the time with this full moon being the time of full expression in our lives. And
Mm.
I was asking questions essentially, really, to the universe or whatever
Mhm.
it is that's out there. And I started to get answers. I started to release a lot of emotions that I didn't realize I needed to. And I was
Mhm.
naturally doing this. And I started to get really interested in what's going on with these moon phases and why, when I seem to work a certain natural cycle about it, does my results in life and the way I feel tend to really amplify. And
Yeah.
I'll say that now, I really do everything by moon phases. Anytime I do a book project or a coaching program or anything to do with anything, I literally plan it according to where we are in our phases. And I've had some incredible things happen because of it.
So do you think this kind of translates into the salmon going with the flow instead of upstream? So now if you're going with the moon phases, you're more in alignment and going with the direction that is going to be less resistant?
Yeah, it's a cost resistant piece, right? And the reason
Yeah.
why this works, so even if you think, okay, moon phases, that's a little weird and out there for me. That's totally okay. Because all this really is a cycle of teaching people how to really connect into your vision and your passion first and how you
Yes.
feel, and then moving into that phase of taking inspired action versus action someone told you to take. And then acknowledging when that imposter comes up and knowing at what
Mm,
point in that cycle is it going to come up and what do I do about it? And then moving to the end of that to say, okay, how do I close out all of the progress that I'm making by making any
gosh.
adjustments or looking at my feedback? And then you do it all again. So it becomes this
Yeah.
natural flow to eliminate the highs and the lows that we tend to go through as, entrepreneurs and just in life.
Yeah, I feel like this is, gosh, so important. I just had a realization that for me, especially, I notice these different phases throughout the month. And sometimes I'm hard on myself or I guilt myself, like, why aren't you in your creative flow? Or why aren't you, grinding? But need this would allow me to give myself permission to rest.
Yeah.
And I've been trying to pay more attention to that. Like, when am I feeling this? When am I feeling more energized and creative? And now I really need to dive into this because
Yeah.
if I go with it instead of against it, it's going to make everything flow so much better. And I'm
Yeah.
all about trying to make things less resistant. With 5 kids, I'm like, okay, what's the best way we can flow through all of this? But it's more internal. You know what I mean? It's more about
Yeah.
what my own thoughts and what I'm going through from day to day. And I don't have I mean, I must have a menstrual cycle, but I don't actually have, like, a period, so I never
Right.
know when it is, which is throws me off even more because 'cause I'm like, "Okay, where am I at right now? Am I approaching? Am I done?" So, yeah, where would I start to even, like, look into that?
Yeah, so I love this because there's so much here that would be a huge benefit for you. And I do a free moon calendar. So
Oh,
it's a great
cool.
way to start off and to learn, okay, when are these phases? What do they mean? And on the moon calendar, it gives you some prompts to say, okay, this might be your focus during this particular week. And
Mhm,
also a mantra that really coincides with that internal sort of adjustment to what we're thinking and feeling.
mhm.
And you can find that at moonlogic.school, and it's super easy to grab. It's brand new every month, and we actually have an app that's releasing very soon that'll have the moon
Ooh,
calendar in the app, and you'll get
that's
notifications. And
awesome.
yeah, I'm very excited. It's been in the works for the last year, and one of the things that was featured on Dragon's Den was actually the app and the navigation deck that goes along with it.
That is so cool, that's huge.
Yeah, thank you.
That's
It's been really
great.
exciting.
Yeah, maybe we can put a link in the show notes to the Moon Logic dot school. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm very interested in that and learning how to just flow more easier and feel good about it. You know what I mean? And not guilt trip myself. And as women with children and working, or even stay-at-home moms, like, everyone just feels like they have so much to do every day, and they gotta get it all done. No time for rest. Make sure the house is clean, laundry's done, make sure your career is good, your husband's good, your kids are good, and it's like, okay, like, this can't happen every single day of our life. It just can't. We will crash straight into burnout.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this is, like, such a valuable tool to use to take care of yourself, honestly.
Yeah, and it really you get the question a lot of the times, "How did you come up with this?" or "How did you get into this?" or "Where did you learn that this works?" And the answer really just is that I did what I felt called to do for me. I researched what I
Mm,
needed to. I started to get these ideas. I implemented them into my own life first, and as soon as I started to seeing these actual really huge results
yeah.
and showing externally, that's when I said, "Oh, wait a minute. This is kind of a really great thing that other people could get a benefit out of." And that's why it seems like things move really quickly for some people, right? When you look on the outside, how can they do all these things in this short amount of time?
Right.
And it's because of alignment. Right? If somebody
Mhm.
else tried to create moon phases and a magic school and it really wasn't their thing, they weren't passionate about it, they could be brilliant at the information, but it would be a slow moving vehicle against the
Right,
grain, that salmon,
right.
because it's not their thing. Right? So it really helps to teach, where is your internal guidance leading you to find your thing.
I was just gonna ask that. How do you find your thing? I know it's probably like such a, wide range question, but for someone who's sitting there listening, who's like, gosh, I have no idea what I want to do, and I don't know what is my passion. I don't know what lights me up. Where would you tell them to start?
Yes, start at the beginning of the cycle. There's this really cool flow that will happen if you do one lunar cycle with me. So, say you even just get the free moon calendar and you're looking at what the
Mm-hmm.
prompts are here. There's huge realizations that you're going to have that there's actually breadcrumbs that are
Mm-hmm.
out there, pieces to your puzzle as to what lights you up and what you're meant to do as your purpose in everything that you're doing. It's almost like this puzzle that is just waiting to be put together.
Mm.
And sometimes what'll happen during, again, that like new moon phase that I tend to really love because it's when the moon is darkest in the sky. You don't really see it glowing, but what's
Okay.
happening is you see all of the stars around the moon that you wouldn't have seen before. And it's highly
Right.
symbolic of going dark and internally and looking at, wait, what are the things that I haven't seen before? Where haven't I not allowed myself to be excited about that thing that I said no to before? Or that my
Mm-hmm.
partner didn't support me on, but I was really excited about. And you start to make some connections during that particular phase as the
Okay.
one that is really supportive in doing that.
What's the next phase? I'm just curious.
Mm. So we are sitting in a really cool time as we are recording this right now. And
Okay.
we are about to come up to, we're about a week away from a full supermoon that's occurring on August 30th. And I
Really?
have been talking about this full supermoon for the last couple of months in the magic school, where you get magic sessions that are dropped in. They're like quick 10-minute videos that really give information on what that phase is all about, what to do, what
Cool.
not to do. And this phase that's coming up, it not only is it a super moon, and it is one of four consecutive super moons, which is like big, beautiful energy that's great for manifesting, but it is also a blue moon.
Hmm.
And the blue moon is one that really only occurs every couple of years. So we're about to enter into a time period where you might get some really exciting hits internally on things
Okay.
that you would have loved to do in the past, but thought, I don't know if that's for me to do. I don't have time for that. Notice those thoughts and feelings that come up over the next 2 weeks here, because we've got this huge container of energy that says it's once in a blue moon for you. You may get
Ooh, I
once in
love
a blue
that.
moon opportunities. So notice when people are asking you to do certain things, what would you have said no to before that maybe you're being guided to say yes to? Because
Yeah.
there's a lot of really great energy, and it's all about this climax. So noticing too that sometimes we're not in this really great state of celebration and, oh my goodness, everything's going fantastic. What
Mhm.
can happen during this time too is more of, ooh, I'm overwhelmed. Ooh, there's so many things I'm doing that I need to not do anymore.
Mm.
And it's also about identifying like what side are you on? It's
Yeah.
just a height of emotions essentially is what the full moon energy represents. So there can be a
Great.
duality to it. Are you at
Like,
a high
great.
or are you at a high of so great? Can be one or
I'm
the other.
yeah, I'm just thinking of my daughter, like, all the emotions that are probably
Yes.
gonna come, so and her name's
Aw.
Blue, so we're gonna have to talk
Oh
about
my.
this blue moon.
Mhm.
I like
Yeah.
sharing this stuff with her. I think it's cool to teach her. She's 8 and
Oh.
really
Aw.
interested in all of that, so that's awesome. Okay, so you're saying for the next 2 weeks, so it's before and during, basically? So it builds
Yeah,
and works?
so
Okay.
just leading up to that full moon phase is what we call the first quarter moon phase. It's technically what we're gonna hit tomorrow, leading up to that time, and it's really where we're building some of this energy. So we're building that climax of emotions, either into the really positive or into what we need to release and
Yeah.
identifying what's coming up. So it's a lot of momentum, and noticing where you're planting seeds energetically is what it's all about. So thoughts
Mhm.
become things, right? What are we focused on? How is that making us show up in a certain way? This is the time period to pay attention to feed your mind good things, especially at this
Yeah.
time because you're planting those seeds.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure I release this episode next week, so it's, like, on
Oh, I love
track,
it.
you know? That way
Yeah.
people can kind of think back to the week before and what's happened and the week that's coming, so that's
So
so cool.
cool.
I love that. Let's see, how much time do we have left? Okay, we have time. I wanted to ask you about your books. There's two books that I was, looking deeper into, and She's No Longer Silent and Home of the Soul. And some of the reviews on Home of the Soul, I need to get that book. It sounds amazing. It sounds like something that's right up my alley. So can you just tell me a little bit about it and what inspired you to write it?
Yeah, so Home on the Soul was essentially written during the three rock bottom years of my life. I didn't expect it to be a book. I was never intending on being an author. I was literally writing
Wow.
down these incredible experiences that were happening to me inside my home.
Mm-hmm.
So I was a real estate agent struggling to sell my own home that really should have sold. I had so many deals fall apart on it, and I was trying to understand, what am I doing wrong? I felt like a failure. But
Mm-hmm.
really, what was happening is I was actually learning how to develop my gifts of sensing energy. I was sort
Right.
of stuck in that home to actually crack open all of the parts of me that I had been rejecting. And it was again like this
Yes.
divine intervention that was going on. And the book I actually wrote had all of these notes and things, these crazy, like things that you would not believe were going on to me at this time. It was fully my spiritual awakening that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And when I ended up moving, my husband and I, we literally sold everything that we had and we moved to a new area, started our lives over. And I put together the book in like 3 months.
Really?
It came through so quickly when I started writing.
Wow.
And it's a really cool experience to read because not only does it actually go into the details of what really happened during that time in my life, but
Mm-hmm.
it talks about how I got out of it. And it also flips back and forth in time.
I like
So it
that.
almost feels like time travel. As you move through the chapters, they're not in sequence of like a linear timeline. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you're actually back even into a past life. There is a transcription there from a past life regression I had done on me that
Mm-hmm.
actually changed a huge issue with sleepwalking that I'd had my entire life. It
Really?
altered the whole course of my sleeping patterns in that particular
Wow.
session.
Who did you do that session with? I'm so curious.
So a dear friend of mine who is a mentor, somebody that just again showed up along my path synchronistically, and she happened to be in town. She actually came to my home. She lived on the other side of the country,
Wow.
but she was able to meet me in my home and do this incredible session. And she
Wow.
became my trainer as well, who I then became a past life regressionist myself and do these types of sessions with clients too now.
That is so cool. So past life regression, I'm trying to think about what that means. And it was affecting your sleep.
Yeah, I was doing a very interesting thing in my sleep. I've always slept well as a child, but into adulthood, doctors were telling me, like, well, this isn't really that usual to actually get up out of bed and not be consciously aware of what you're doing. It's pretty dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And I started doing these really erratic behaviors that my husband was even a little bit worried about my own safety and his safety. And I was not conscious of what I was doing. So I had to get to the root of why I was doing what I was doing in my sleep. And
Yeah.
it turns out that I really had an incredible reason for something that I was reenacting in my sleep on repeat. It was almost like when you have the night terrors, but I was
Yeah.
physically acting out the night terror essentially and having no conscious memory of it and waking up in a state of terror. Like it was a
Yeah.
lifelong issue that literally resolved like just immediately after doing that session. And the really cool thing about past life regression is that you don't actually have to believe in past lives. Like, I understand that that might be a little bit outside of the comfort zone for many people out there. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even really at first either. But it is more about your mind and somebody guiding you to make the connections in your subconscious to information that you're ready to resolve. So,
Mm-hmm.
whether or not it becomes a story that really makes sense, that helps you make connections and resolve the way you're thinking about something,
Yeah.
or is it actually tapping into memories that you knew to be true at another time? We don't
Yeah.
know. No one ever knows. No one can tell you
Wow.
they concretely know for certain. But all I can say is it works. And it's really helpful.
What were you acting out?
So I had an experience where in past life, I had my entire family that I lost in a very tragic fire.
Mm.
And one of the things that I was re-experiencing essentially in my sleep, and I don't have any experience like this in my actual life or anything that
Mm-hmm.
I've, lived in my actual experience. But what I was doing in my sleep was I would wake up hovering almost over top of my husband in like a protective stance and like over
Wow.
top of him, still lying in the bed, but like almost like you'd throw yourself over someone that you're trying
Yeah.
to protect. And I would just then wake up in a state of terror in
Ugh.
that position and looking up. Like I would be looking up like something is coming down on us. And it was really horrible to experience time and time again.
I'm
And I
sure.
didn't have any memory of what I was seeing or feeling or anything. It was just almost like old muscle memory. My body was
Mhm.
doing it unconsciously. And in having the actual memory of going through the details of what I felt
Mhm.
to be true during that regression, I was able to not only connect to, okay, this is what you're doing, but then you can make steps to really resolve the way you think about it when
Mhm.
you're in this more so hypnotic type state, right? And allowing
Right.
for myself to see my future where I was able to overcome those deep sadness feelings of grief for losing my loved ones, and that I was safe in the place that I was now, that I did not need to hold on to that pain. And it really
Mhm.
moves you through all of those pieces.
Wow. That's incredible. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, I
Changed my
don't.
life. It's in the book. It's a total transcript. You'll get to immerse yourself in what that
Ugh.
experience was.
That's I love the sound of this book because it sounds so real, so raw and relatable and real things you were experiencing. And I love the back and forth between time. Some of my favorite books are like that. So yeah, I'm super excited to read it. Home of the Soul, and I think you can get it on Amazon, can't you?
Yes, it's on
Yeah.
Amazon, and, it's on quite a few different places, and it's, on my website. If you go to coachkady.com, there's a couple of places to buy it.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll link all of that in the show notes as well. And then your other book, She's No Longer Silent. What is that one about?
Mm. So that was actually a co-author book that I was a part of before I wrote Home of the Soul. I had
Oh,
an
wow.
opportunity, yeah, to do a chapter in a book, and I said no to it because I was very, very afraid to share anything about what my story
Mm,
had been. My personality had been shut down for quite some time in all of those old experiences. And I had a really good friend who actually stepped up and said, look, I'm going to support you in whatever you need to be in this book and
that's
to get
awesome.
through writing this. And so it talks about my story of anxiety. It's just a chapter in that particular one, and being able to really start using my voice for the very first time and gaining confidence in that.
Isn't it funny how we do these things while we're still feeling it? You were still working through it at the time because she had to kind of support you through it. But you're
Yeah.
writing to show other people that you can do it while you're
Yeah.
still going through it. Like that's why I love coaching. That's why I love this work because we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to be perfect in these, you know, have a white coat on or you know what I mean, just know it
Yeah.
all. We can be going through the journey ourselves while helping other people, while
Yeah.
helping other people, improve their life in some way. Just because maybe we went through it already, we're just a little further ahead, you know?
Yeah.
So I
Oh,
love that.
100%.
Yeah, I love that part. It really was something that held me back for so long from speaking out and being myself and being able to be vulnerable because I didn't think anyone would want to hear me, you know? So until I started learning, like, okay, no, if I would have known what I know right now 5 years ago, I would have wanted someone to tell me, walking in,
Yeah.
walking into a relationship and blending a family. Like, there's so much more I want to talk about with that. And because it's so common these days, like so many blended families everywhere now that people need support in that area. So that's another thing that I'm really interested in. But yeah, I love that we can be going through these things while helping other people. That's the beauty of it. I have another question for you. I'm really curious on your take of the power of storytelling because I really am looking for people that want to share their story, but I'm finding that people are really nervous and they're afraid to be vulnerable on a podcast on such a large platform. What can you tell me about the power of storytelling, like how it really impacts the world? Because I know it does, but I want my listeners to know too.
Yeah, storytelling is really the key to healing. And there's an interesting thing that tends to happen when we tell our stories. So, yes, it is absolutely incredibly normal to feel like you can't. right? The very
Mhm.
first thought is, I don't know how I'm going to do that because what is so and so going to think? Or how am I going to feel? Or I don't know if I'm the person who should be sharing this, and all the thoughts that we have. But
Right.
the magic behind sharing your story is that two things are going to happen. Number one, you are going to inspire somebody else who is going through what you're going through to find their own sense of power. They're going to make their own connections through your story to move them through. And you're not even going to know that you've inspired this person, that you've made a difference in their life, that then that person's going to make a difference in their kid's life or their spouse life or somebody else down the line. And it's the ripple effect to how we actually get through this life experience is by sharing our stories. So it's almost like it's your mission. If it's on
Mhm.
your heart, if you're scared to do it, like do the thing that scares you most because it is part of your mission.
Mhm.
And the second thing that is a byproduct of this is it is part of your healing journey. It is part of the healing and the dealing
Yes.
of your journey. And
Exactly.
the moment in which you actually share those pieces that you feel that you couldn't is when we start to make integration and resolution on them. And
Mhm.
we get this outside perspective all of a sudden when we say it out loud. Like the first time I said, I'm really struggling with anxiety to a stranger. And it felt really icky for me to say. But the moment I did, it started to transfer all of those old feelings outside of me
Mhm.
so that I could then make the connections I needed to, meet the people I needed to. And it is part of the stepping stone to being on the other side where you feel like you can authentically share that story. And then you'll have another story of something else that you've gone through that'll feel like, I don't know if I can share that part of my story. And
Yes.
you'll move through that journey of finding a way to do it because you know that it is going to make a difference for someone else and because it is going to make a difference for you personally in doing it as well.
Seriously, that was so perfectly said. Amazing.
Mm,
Like, I wanna clap right
thank
now.
you.
I'm definitely going to cut that and make it a videogram because that was awesome. Um,
Thanks.
yeah, it's so true. It's such a huge part of healing, and it's telling my story has healed me in places I didn't even know I still needed to heal, so I love that, and I hope that my audience listening knows that their story can inspire someone, and it will. And like you said,
Yeah.
you won't even know it. I get so many people just like a random message, and they're like, "Wow, hearing episode number 4 really helped me feel like I wasn't alone, and thank you so much." And those are the messages that keep me going. Those are the ones that are like, "All right, Charlotte, you should keep doing this." And as soon as I think, "Oh, no one's listening," but, like, I know they are, but in my brain's trying to trick me, you know? I'll get these messages coming in, or I'll see someone and they'll say, "I didn't know you had a podcast, it's so good, and I'm loving it." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you, universe. I needed to hear that." I needed to feel like someone's getting something from this, and they truly are. So that's why I'm inviting you, like, if you have a story and you wanna share it, and it might be scary, but like Katie's saying, do the thing that's scary. It's going to help heal you, and we could have an amazing conversation and both learn and grow, and you're going to inspire the listeners. So, Katie, I so appreciate all of this. This whole conversation was absolutely incredible. So, thank you for sharing your vulnerability and your expertise, and really just opening the window to so many new things that I can't wait to dive into myself.
Thank you so much for having me here. And if you're listening and you're, thinking about doing the whole story thing yourself, I would highly, highly suggest you connect with Charlotte because my goodness, the energetic container in this space that you've created, just you may not sense it through the airwaves, but I sense it here with you.
Thank
And
you.
you've created an amazing thing for people to feel safe in sharing.
Yeah.
And that's a natural skill and ability. So keep doing your magic there because you're doing something really good for the world.
Thank you so much. I received that fully. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.